This is our very first podcast series on menopause. So this is going to be a 3-part series. This first part is going to primarily talk about perimenopause. We'll dive into some fitness and nutrition with the team we have here. Just a little bit of a breakdown here. So this is the time of transition marked by hormonal shifts that can impact everything from your energy to your sleep, weight, mood. So supporting your body through these phases with intentional movement, keyword is intentional, and nutrition can make the world of a difference. We'll explore how to adjust your fitness routine to align with the changing hormones, boost metabolism, preserve muscle mass and bone health, and then practical nutrition strategies to balance blood sugar, reduce inflammation, promote overall well-being. And this is about working with your body, not against it. So we'll go around quick, give some introductions. So my name is Brittany. I sit in the East Coast, and then I'm going to pass it over to Jenna.
Hello, I'm Jenna. I'm one of the general managers with Kanema. I'm also on the East Coast.
And Leah.
Oh, I'll go.
Oh.
Okay, so nope, I was gonna give it to our token male. So my name's Leah Atkinson, Senior Vice President for Kanema Fitness, also with a fitness background and token, I guess, perimenopausal female who's living the dream in this hormonal state at this moment. And then I'll give it to Justin.
Yeah, I'm Justin. I'm one of the general managers over there in San Diego. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to pop on and just chit chat through all these different topics here. So I wanted to just kind of start off with saying, like, what is the typical age range of perimenopause? So I have it down, it's either, late 30s to early 40s. Again, this can change and, vary from person to person. Most common onset, 40 to 44, and then can last anywhere from 4 to 10 years. It could be longer, it could be shorter. Really depends on the person and maybe your lifestyle. And
I think nowadays the ranges, they're, even stating things like it happens, as soon as you can hit 35, it just varies from person to person. And I think a good thing is always to look at, your mother, and possibly even grandmother, depending on when they started going through, which is always usually a good indicator sometimes of when a female will probably end up starting to enter it. But kind of, as you said, Brittany, like definitely diet, nutrition, you start going sideways with that earlier in life, it can come on quicker.
So a point you just mentioned, to look at like your mom, your grandmother. So if they went through it earlier, are you more or less likely to also maybe go through it or start it earlier as well? I know my mom did. And then just a little bit of a personal insight on me. So I actually had one of my ovaries removed about over a year ago. I know Leah was informed about this when this happened, but so one of the questions I had asked my surgeon was like, what are the symptoms of, losing an ovary? And he's like, honestly, stuff should remain the same. He did say, though, that entering menopause might be sooner than what you maybe had expected. But so that's just kind of something that I guess I'll.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that has to do with just loss of, what you're producing in your ovaries. So it's like the quicker everything's out and done, it's the faster you're going to go through menopause or enter the perimenopause once that's like the decline starts to happen. And then a lot of times if women have endometriosis or something where, they have more of the shedding of the lining of everything, they can go through it a lot quicker because they're just literally dumping it out of their body faster.
I feel like I didn't know that it could be that early. I feel like that's a misconception. It's like people think it's a certain age, but I feel like that sounds early. I know, I just didn't think about that, how early it could be.
Yeah, it's really a crapshoot, I think, sometimes for everybody. From what I have read, what has happened to the females ahead of you in your family could be indicators. I know my primary care physician has asked me those questions. I started, I guess, going through it probably at probably 2 years ago at 45, I think, where what you at first you're like, you're not quite sure, because my doctor even told me that was every time I tell them what's going on, they're like, but you're so young. I'm like, but am I? I don't know. So the symptoms things can start to happen without you really realizing it.
Well, it could be symptoms similar to like having your period. Like we have hormonal changes through that and mood swings and, all
also,
of similar stuff.
If you're a really fit individual too, I mean, for females, and sorry, Justin, you don't get to experience this, but like if you're really lean, you can go to amenorrhea, right? Where you start losing your menstrual cycle, it disappears for a little bit, or your hormones are out of whack, and then the perimenopause situation starts. You know what I mean? Like you don't know. Like usually you're in it for a couple of years without, then all of a sudden you're like, crap, this is what's happening. And a lot of times there's really no tests to figure it out. You can get a blood test, but sometimes it's pretty inconclusive.
Could birth control affect any of these things? I mean, if a woman's on birth control, I mean, there's a lot of them out there, but like, for most of her life, if she's on it for a couple of years and then gets off of it, like, I can imagine that, I don't know, might play into it a little bit.
From what I know, there's theories on yes or no, because it just sort of depends. So I think what happens is when you're on a form of birth control and your menstrual cycle is regulated, your body is just it's just on regulation. It's timed by the hormones. So let's say in a different scenario, you were never ever on birth control. You honestly don't know if your body was going through menopause sooner because you have a hormone that's regulating it for you. So I think it just really depends on where your body is. Typically, there's always, when you come off of birth control, depending on how long you've been on it, there's a huge hormone adjustment. So women could, typically go into where maybe it's just regular, it doesn't skip a beat, or they do miss it for like 3 to 6 months because their body's like, wait, you've been giving us hormones all along. And then once they emerge out of it, like their body could be, I mean, there's a good length of time where it could be all messed up. And then all of a sudden on the other end of it, depending on how old they are when they exit birth control, then they could think maybe the birth control coming off of it caused them to go into perimenopause and menopause, or it was just something that would have happened all along. It's not hard to say.
Who knows?
From what I know, from the reason, I mean, I am not a gynecologist or a hormone specialist doctor. For me, it's just really the journey that I've been on with the delving into research that I've done to try to figure it all out, which you can't. So.
No. Yeah, it's interesting. There's so much stuff that can play into it, that couldn't play into it. Wild. So I just wanted to talk about, the transition to menopause, so perimenopause to menopause, officially will complete when there's been 12 consecutive months without a period, is kind of what I was researching and finding out. So the average age of menopause is 51 for most women, which that's, seems to be pretty standard.
That makes sense. Yeah. But usually I think that's the clinical definition of, 12 months without anything. Wow. But sometimes on that 12th month, you could then get it. And then you're like, what the hell?
I can start all over again.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends that, have had the same conversation where they're like, totally thought I was done. On vacation, 12th month, all of a sudden, full-fledged menstrual cycle, bleeding everywhere, wearing white, because they weren't expecting it. It's great.
Justin, the woman, the joys of being a female.
Yeah.
And question for you guys for me, my background, I've been a personal trainer for a long time. I'm now, I guess what I would call more of a regular person because I don't actively manage a gym or teach classes like I used to. Do you guys see, or I guess with the females that you train, what are the difficulties that you're seeing, or do you hear a specific dialogue consistently from women they might be training that might be going through it or that has questions? Are you seeing any Like what kind of dialogue, I guess, comes out of their mouth that you're having to address with them regularly.
Yeah, and I could chime in a little bit here. I'm sure everyone has their own experiences, but real common for me is like weight control, right? You hear it all the time. Growing up, I used to be so active, and then, it kind of wasn't as anymore. And then I just put on this weight and I just can't get it off. And that kind of ties back into what we'll talk about then, nutrition. But that to me is like one of the most common ones I run into, people going through menopause and whatnot, for sure.
Yeah, I'm training two ladies right now who are of the same age, give or take maybe a year or two. I want to say they're in their maybe late 40s, early 50s. And they're training with me due to they're getting a little bit more frail, they're losing their balance, they want to make sure that they're protecting their bones, keeping their muscle mass on, are they eating enough protein, and they don't want to be, growing older and more frail. So
are they on the other side of menopause? Like, have they crossed the bridge, if you will?
Yes, I'm pretty sure they've
crossed over the red rainbow bridge. To call it.
Yeah, so they have no longer.
Okay. All right. And then with Justin, are the women that are kind of like still like they're on the bridge, they're off the bridge, they're not fully into menopause, but the perimenopause?
Yeah, I think with like the
Combination of
population
both.
I work with, they tend to be more kind of like on the peri end, either coming up to or around there. There's been a few women who are going through menopause at that time as well. So a nice little gamut.
I'll chime in too. I guess I don't have a client that's directly in it, but preventative as far as like wants to like gain muscle and like, prevent bone loss. So like, I don't know, like makes me happy that people are like thinking ahead of it and like are doing these things to like try to like push it off.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, just to give feedback on, kind of what happens as you start to go through it is, I mean, for female, yes. I mean, all of a sudden you wake up one day and you go and it really kind of hits you out of nowhere where you're like, wow, I don't look the way I usually think I look. And then it's just like, what the hell just happened?
What happened?
Like what happened? And then, you know, it's so different for each individual female that goes through it, right? So, somebody who could be got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, like not a problem, get up and work out, like can't get up at 5, needs like a whole hour and a half to get ready to actually work out. Changes their workout completely. They may not sleep well anymore because hot flashes are real, or just, their sleeping schedule because their hormones are so crossed, they don't sleep, so that affects their workouts, or just getting up and their energy in general. And then we all know as trainers that your lack of sleep usually leads to poor nutrition, right? Because you're just going to crave the sugary donut because you're working on survival and you're just trying to stay awake, and you caffeine yourself up for half of the day and forget to eat.
It's me today.
So it's kind of always one of those things. And then I think what it lots of times ends up happening too is you move along in your life not thinking you're about to hit that stage, and then when you do, all of a sudden look in the mirror and you're like, oh crap. Everybody does have that panic. It's kind of too late. What did happen? But typically too, at least this is what I feel, is there's usually in a woman's age too, like you get to a certain point, especially towards your 40s, your lifestyle changes in general. You do end up being more sedentary, depending on if you decide to have children. But if like even if you have kids, depending on where they are too, your lifestyle just changes and you are not as active, and you're feeling a little bit more tired. So typically, it like kind of what you said, Jenna, getting women to preemptively really think about like strength training has to be on the forefront, even if I'm like 32, like I got it. If I haven't been hitting those weights, I gotta do it now or I'm gonna be in trouble. And then like constantly trying to keep sight of the nutrition, being aware of what your activity level is when it changes.
That's a nice segue into fitness strategies. Sorry, I feel like, am I echoing?
You're fine.
So yeah, I just wanted to touch points on, like, getting ahead of it and making sure that women are thinking about it and just having it on their mind that like, you can not prevent, but like it does not have to be that bad. So like focusing on mobility and core work, and then obviously prioritizing your strength training anywhere from 2 to 4 times a week, whatever that looks like for you. Um, you know, but why are we focusing on strength training? We want to keep that muscle mass and bone density because that's going to decline with our estrogen loss. So a lot of women will come and be like, well, what do I have to do specifically for strength training? So you want to focus on those compound lifts, which is like your squats, deadlifts, presses, body weight resistance, which can be like push-ups, pull-ups, etc. And then free weight or machines, those types of things. So, but then I get a lot of, oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say, what do you guys do? So, like a lot of times, so for example, me, I'm just going to put myself into the category, like my background is fitness. I was a general manager. I, used to teach 8+ classes a week, did all the things where I did not have to think about fitness. And then, it became a desk job. And so my life has changed. And I feel like that happens sort of a little bit differently with a lot of women you guys might train, where they all of a sudden, like Jenna or Justin, they're coming to you and it's like, I'm in it, right? Like maybe they're past menopause, but they're also maybe the generation of women that they're like, what do you mean I have to lift over 5 pounds? Which I think is always the hardest part, where we still have this stigmatism with women where it's, I'm not going to lift weights because I'm going to get big and I'm going to get bulky. So do you guys have any tips for the female that's like, I want to lose the 20 pounds that I've gained. I'm starting to look not the way I want to. I've been doing the elliptical and I've been running for so long. Like, what do you do? That's like, I guess, what tips do you give them to try to convince them strength training is the way to go?
I get that all the time.
Yeah. I would just start with like having more muscle just improves your metabolism in general. It's like if you have more muscle and you want to lose fat, like it's going to be way easier if you have more muscle. Like, even just at rest, like having more muscle, you're just burning more. So like I'm always like number one, I was like strength train. But I feel like, as you mentioned, people are still in like the world of like, it's gonna make me bulky. Yeah, for sure. But it's really actually hard to like, at least for myself, to actually bulk up from like lifting weights.
Well, that's the whole misconception, right? Is like, then you gotta give them the eye roll, but not really, and just be like, you are definitely not gonna get big, especially if you haven't done any strength. That's not your goal, and you're not, eating all, doing all the things that you need, which is extremely hard for women to get to that point. And it's 1,000% a lifestyle that you have to live in order to, like the women that they see on TV that they feel are too bulky. Yeah, it's kind of like, how do you educate them behind that, where, they can't push their body weight? Like, that's kind of the scariest part, where you're like, okay, come on, let's start the weight training program. And that they have a journey ahead of them. And just getting them started with like their basic like body weight. So you guys had, like, let's say you had a woman come in who's, starting the journey, and, they're like, if you had to give me three exercises in fitness to do, like, and how often to do them, what would you prescribe to them?
I always actually go back to functional. So like, what does your daily life look like generally? And then usually it's, I'm like picking stuff up off from the ground, putting it up and into a cabinet. Yeah. I'm like, okay, great. So a deadlift is going to be, a staple we'll do. Some type of like good morning type of exercise, and squats, whatever that may look like. Because those are very functional moves where you're going to use those muscles in your everyday life. And they're going to target a lot of different areas in your body also. So that's usually what I start with. I know Jenna can probably.
Mine's similar. Like, I have a client or a lot of people have children, so like they're picking their children up and throwing them around and playing with them. So I always do squat too. It's like my go-to. And then push up, because even like things they can do at home, like their own weight against themselves, push up. And I always put in like some type of row, just because most of my clients are also like at a desk. So like everyone's always concerned about posture. So that's still like working all those muscles too. So those are kind of like my 3 go-tos.
Justin, welcome back. We lost you for a second. That's okay. The question that we've asked is, if you have somebody like a woman's going through perimenopause, menopause, that's just starting their fitness journey, meaning like maybe they've just been doing cardio their whole life, or whatever it is, they've taken a hiatus for a little bit. What are the 3 exercises you would prescribe for them to, do on repeat, or to make a staple to really start making a change in their bone density? You're muted.
Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Technical difficulties, internet drop. Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like a lot of times ladies, they tend to steer towards the cardio and not so much weight bearing. I'm sure you guys probably touched on at some point. So the first thing I steer them towards is like, hey, weight bearing, loading the body, not always high impact. That's definitely dependent on the person, right? If they've never really run before, I'm not gonna put them on the treadmill because no knee injuries, things like that. But so I know I heard you say like squat. So squat, great movement, loads the whole skeletal system. Just really kind of getting weights in their hands, getting them comfortable, not with the machines, but with the free weights tends to be a thing. A lot of them just haven't really touched it too much. So I'm like, hey, let me introduce you. Let me show you some movements. And I think that tends to have like the most impact, right? Get them comfortable holding the dumbbell.
Yeah, and like getting them comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. I think people, when they start to feel that, they're like, oh, no, I can't, it's too much, or I'm gonna get hurt, or this doesn't feel right, I don't like it, and they back off. So they never go past the 8-pound dumbbell that they've been doing for 20 years.
So that's the big thing, right? It's like, it's not just having a load, it's having enough of a load to give you that stimulus, right? Bones don't stay healthy on their own. They need that stimulus. So a lot of times a 5-pound dumbbell just isn't going to do it.
Yeah.
No.
I guess, how do you coach them through that? Like, I mean, I remember when young, like in my career, hearing that for the first time, where you would see somebody struggle with 5 pounds and you're like, I know you're not struggling with 5 pounds. You're doing a bicep curl, like, and you're 28 years old. I mean, so I guess, like, is there certain cues you guys use, or like for the audience that's out here now, if you have somebody that's listening, I guess, how do you explain what the uncomfortable feels like, and how when it's okay, and how when it's maybe you're taking on too much?
So I do this every single person. I'll have them do a set of 10 typically, and we'll go through it typically with a breeze, like they're not really struggling towards the last couple of repetitions. They'll finish and I go, so how do you feel? And they're usually like, oh, that felt good. I'm like, all right, let's maybe try maybe a 10-pound. And that's kind of how I step by step.
Good is the wrong answer.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then they learn. So they're like, oh, they're going to ask you. So I'm going to like, oh,
That's
That's always the trick.
right. Yeah.
My favorite. How you feeling? Great. Okay. Wrong answer.
Great. So then I'm like, you're stronger than you think. Let's maybe try this a little bit heavier weight, and see what you can do with it. So
Like that.
yeah, that's
My thing is always like the last 3 reps should be like challenging, uncomfortable, like you almost can't finish them. And that's always like last 3 reps should be hard. But like, just like you said, like I'll check in on the last 3 reps and she's like, oh yeah, I got it. No big deal. It's good. Like just trying to like, don't increase the weight on me.
Justin, do you have any cues for them where, like, indicators of, okay, maybe it is too much? Like, what's the difference between kind of that, and do you ever explain, like, okay, if you do feel X, Y, and Z, maybe you did go heavier? Because then you might have other women that are like, the biggest thing is, I used to work out a lot, and the last time I worked out, I know how to do a deadlift, and I was deadlifting like 150, right? And then, and after you've done like their whole history, you're like, okay, you haven't really worked out in about 3 years. So I guess, how do you guide them back down? Because, women that are still like, beasts are going to go through menopause. So
For sure, for sure. One of my big indicators is recovery, and it does get a little tricky because a lot of studies out there support that women are just better at recovering than men. So it's a plus for the ladies. But I kind of talk them through, like, especially never done weights before. Hey, day right after working out, maybe not so bad. That second day though, you're probably gonna feel sore, right? Is it gonna feel like someone kind of beat you up a little bit? That third, fourth day, and of course showing them like good recovery. If you feel like you're kind of tapering down, feeling pretty good, all right, not too bad. But that second day comes and you don't feel a thing, hey, then let's up it a little bit, right? More sets, reps, whatever it is. But that a lot of times helps to like individualize it, right? Like I do like the rule of thumb, like the last 2 or 3 reps are hard. Someone newer, I like to go by the philosophy like called like reps in reserve. Like, hey, what's a good weight? Hey, starting off, after you pick up that weight, you do a set, like you got about 2 to 3 reps in the tank, and that causes them to kind of like self-reflect. And they're like, no, I could have done like 5, 10 more. I was like, oh well, that's let's up the weight a little bit. They kind of struggle on the last one, like, okay, let's float up that weight a little bit. 2 days from now, you feeling a little sore, that's good. And then taper, okay, we're on the right track. I kind of use that as like my guiding star.
That's a good one. Um, I even still to this day with like women I talk to who are like just starting out the journey for the first time. And like I go to a gym that does group training that it works for me. I love it. Um, and I see a lot of new women come in and typically they're all older. And my advice to them always is for at least the first month that you're doing this, just experience the workout. Don't like your goal is to get form. Don't feel that you have to lift X amount. Like if you worked out before, forget what you ever did. And then just at least for so many visits, experience it until you're comfortable with it. Because I've seen so many women come back to the gym and they hit it hard or they're new to it and they're looking at everybody else try like especially if it's kind of a group fitness type of setting and they're they get super intimidated or they think they're not good enough because they can't they see another female that's lifting a lot more because gyms have changed and women are lifting a lot but trying to let them know that it's okay that your journey is just starting if that's kind of the case, so just experience it and keep coming back and all of a sudden it'll click and it'll be comfortable.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Well, I think we hammered down the fitness aspect of this. So we're going to kind of move into nutrition. I know, Leah, you might have to pop off here.
I do have to.
But... Okay. Well, thank you for joining and giving us, all of the information and your experience and knowledge.
You're welcome. I'm not over the Red Rainbow Bridge quite yet. But just things like, I guess my only advice for, whether one, it's a trainer or two, if it's like somebody who is, kind of going through it. Unfortunately, there's still so much research that needs to be done on perimenopause and menopause. Women always have to be their own advocate because there's no one size fits all that's out there. And, if you have a doctor that you don't feel is listening to you, find a different doctor. Talk to all sorts of different doctors, but also, one female's journey with it is not necessarily yours. So you never can really kind of compare. It's just kind of figuring out what's best for you. And then nobody really has to settle because there are also phenomenal resources and trainers that we have and, registered dietitians and people that are really trying to move the movement forward, the needle for women in this area. So, all right. Well, good luck.
Thanks, Leah.
Okay, bye.
All right. So, Justin, we're going to hand the ball to you because we're going to end our session here with some nutrition information. The top priority is protein. Protein. Why is this important? You probably have a lot of women that are like, oh, I eat enough protein. And it's like, do you?
Yeah. I guess this kind of sheds light why I'm here, right? I'm the nutrition guy. Yeah, protein is a big issue with the ladies. On average, the American diet, like we're getting more than enough protein, but that's like average men and women. But women tend to, on the lighter end, especially like vegan, vegetarian diets, super popular. But yeah, as we kind of go through menopause, kind of leading up to, your protein needs actually increase. It's kind of reflected in when you see people like start to lose a little bit of muscle, lose some bone mass. You might need to up that protein to help preserve that muscle, preserve that bone health. So on average, the average American, this isn't even including exercise. This is just like if I'm just regular guy or regular lady going to work, coming home, I need to be getting about 8.8 grams of protein per kilogram. Now, for those of us who are in the States, kind of think like, 4 to
What's the
0.5.
conversion?
Yeah, right. About 0.4 to 0.5 grams per pound, right? So really, it's not that high, but that's not including exercise, and that's not including people going through menopause or leading up to menopause. So it actually needs to be a bit higher. So that's something they have to kind of play with, right?
Right, right. And I always say too, like, making sure you're getting some source of protein with every meal. So you're not just getting it, when you're eating your dinner, trying to include it, your breakfast, maybe some snacks, lunch, and dinner. So it's spread out throughout the day, a little bit more manageable because when they, try to load all their protein in one meal, they're like, oh my gosh, this is so much. I'm too full. Um, so what's kind of your take on, I guess, is there like an average per like, grams per meal that, women, coming up to perimenopause, should kind of be thinking about per meal, of how much protein maybe they should be getting in?
Yeah, for sure. That's a good question. I know obviously it's going to be like highly individualized. Like a little rule of thumb is anywhere from like 15 to 25. But probably the best thing that anyone listening could probably do is kind of take that rate, that zero point 0.4 to zero point 0.5, bump it up a bit, especially because we're going to be exercising, right? We're learning that we're doing that. And then, figure that out and then space it out. And you got to ask yourself realistically, like, how much am I eating a day? Like, if I'm just a 3 meal person and I'm not getting any snacks, like, okay. But I do always recommend snacks and whatnot, because like you said, a lot of people, they try to fit it in at the end of the day. Like, I didn't eat anything, all at the end. And it's tough. It's tough for anyone who's trying to shove it all in, kind of a double-edged sword for protein. It's very satiating. It makes you feel real full and it keeps you full. So that's why it's like another reason why it's important to kind of spread it out throughout the day. But if you're getting about that, that 15 to 25, you're probably okay. But it's always good to get like that individual kind of take, right?
Right. I have some ladies too that are Jenna, you too, or Justin, that are like, oh, like, I get, I'm drinking this protein shake and like, to supplement it with my, actual like plant or meat-based protein. Um, I guess what is your take on, you know, supplementing the protein for the powder as I get this as a meal replacement is what I hear a lot from ladies too. So then you got that whole, end of it as well. Um,
Yeah, that's very common, right? Like I skipped lunch because I had a shake, right? But I like to tell people like it's in the name, it's a supplement, right? It's supposed to supplement your average diet, not replace any foods. So if you are having a hard time getting that protein in, like 100% recommend, especially like in a liquid form. It's much quicker to digest. It doesn't make you feel as full longer. And nowadays you can get a high concentration of protein in one drink. Like one drink can up to like 30 grams. I've seen one for like 50. So you definitely don't need like a 50 gram. Yeah, it's
That's
wild. Right? It's wild. So
be full for days.
Yeah.
I would 100% recommend to have it supplement, especially if you're having a hard time getting it in, but always go food first, just because one of the issues that people experience as they kind of approach or go through menopause is like the cravings, right? I can't feel satiated. I'm just still hungry. That has a lot to do with, our decreased insulin sensitivity as, estrogen's kind of going all over the place. Your body's not as good as taking that sugar in your blood and putting it into the cells. So then your body thinks, I'm hungry, right? So having like that whole chicken breast will make you feel much more satiated and full longer than just having that drink, right? I could
Mhm.
eat a 400-calorie meal and I feel pretty good for a while. I can drink a 4 or 5, 600-calorie drink and like, 15 minutes later I'm starving. So
Right, right. I mean, I've experienced that too. Like a couple years ago, I would, after each workout, I drink a protein shake, like we all do. And then I'm like, 30 minutes go by and I'm like, all right, starving. Not the same
I
as
feel like
like
also
eating
it's like
steak or
different,
chicken.
like chewing food. Like you know the difference between like you're chewing something, like you're like, oh, I'm eating a meal. But like when you drink it, it's like for me, same thing. It's like, oh, I just it's like nothing in there. Like
It's like a snack, if that.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you bring that up because there's actually a psychology behind that. It's fancy with mastication, right? It's just chewing.
Yeah.
So our body kind of sends these signals as I'm chewing things. I'm feeling like satisfied. I'm like, oh, I know it's gonna be good. I'm excited. A lot of people just kind of throw back a drink and might not even hit your tongue. So
Yeah. No, I experienced
straight down the hatch.
Right?
Gut health too. I mean, that's important with the effects of estrogen as, recycling in its immune function. So liver support, hormone detox, you mentioned the insulin, so like blood sugar balance and all that. So nutrition's very important as equally as, the workout and fitness component too, as women are, kind of going through these changes or trying to figure out what is going on with their body. And I guess just knowing the signs, the symptoms, the signals, and just, paying attention to what's going on and being in tune with your body too, I think is important. So.
For sure. What I like to tell people is because, a lot of times people ask, like, what do I eat? Just tell me what I eat. And, even if a dietitian gives you a meal plan, you don't want to eat the same thing every day, right? No one does. We get in a habit, so on. But, when you want to change up breakfast, you kind of like, okay, now what? Instead, I like to kind of give people like philosophies or ideas. So a great kind of like diet, for lack of better terms, of like way of eating would be like something like the Mediterranean diet, right? You probably hear it all the time for different things, and there's a reason to it. Whole grains, lots of colorful fruits and vegetables, lean proteins. It's really kind of checking all the boxes you need for a lot of different functions, but including menopause. So like we kind of talk about some of the issues is like, hey, insulin sensitivity, I got more inflammation, I'm losing bone, I'm losing muscle, right? Well, the Mediterranean philosophy of eating kind of checks all those boxes. Insulin sensitivity, those whole grain carbs help reduce those blood sugar spikes. Inflammation, once again, whole grain carbs help with that. They feed the good bacteria in our gut, keeps them happy. Those release, antioxidants in the body. Bone mass, it really helps to get like the calcium, the vitamin D. So if you're not a big fan of the bony fish are a great source of calcium. Of course, there's like, dairy products, things like that. There's different fruits and vegetables that are pretty good too. So really kind of like the whole gamut of that. So rather than be like, hey, eat this in the morning, this afternoon, this in the evening, it's like, hey, kind of look at this philosophy of eating and then slowly try to replicate it, right? It's not going to happen overnight, but over time, you'll be surprised at what you can accomplish and kind of shift your patterns.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for any of you listening, if you're taking notes.
I did want to add, I meant to piggyback on the back of Leah, but then my internet cut. She brought up a really good point, and so I'm backtracking a little bit. Leading up to menopause and things to do beforehand, one of the best things you can do for the sake of long-term like longevity is like for your bone health, right? So we reach peak bone mass, the healthiest your bones are going to be at 30. And from that point forward, it's just like kind of like fighting the loss, right? It's going to be a loss, nothing you can do about it. So you got to make sure, you guys probably talked about the exercise, make sure you're getting that calcium, the vitamin D, all that really building out. I like to tell people, build up your bone bank. You got to make deposits in your bone bank. I know we kind of touched on birth control. Birth control, there's a lot of association with, bone loss or bone mineral density loss. So making sure that you're checking those boxes, especially if you are taking a birth control, is just really going to set you up long term. Most people don't care about their bone health until it becomes an issue, right? Which is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Right, which is like way later. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I used to have osteopenia, which is like when people like the pre-stage of osteoporosis, which is like when most people you think like elderly people, which is like for me, I'm under 30, so like that's not good. But I was like taking a calcium supplement. I started like weight bearing exercise and like I totally like reversed it like just by doing those things. And like now it's like good. But yeah, you can, it's just crazy. Like you don't think about it, but I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea like that. My bones were just like needed some calcium and some weight bearing exercise. Yeah.
Well, I'm over 30. I'm not going to say how over 30 I am, but I've already started to notice, I don't think I'm going through any of this stuff yet, but like my job is getting a little bit more sedentary. And so I'm noticing like, oh, like, okay, I really have to prioritize my workouts now. Like I could just kind of, do them whenever, 2 or 3 years ago. And now I'm kind of like, okay, I really got to make sure I'm fitting it in and, really honing in on my nutrition and all of the things. So I'm 32, by the way. So for anybody listening, I'm over my bone's going to start to go down now. Well, hopefully not, but
You just gotta
all the
keep
stuff
doing
that
the
we're
right thing.
doing. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys hopping on and chit-chatting. Again, this is going to be a 3-part series. So we're just, we just dove in pretty much to the perimenopause and everything before leading up to that in this session. So I just want to, thank you guys for taking the time again to come on here and give you your expertise and examples and, sharing some good information to help our audience listening. So
Thanks for
thank you.
having us.
Yeah.
Just thanks for having us.
All right. Well, happy Friday and everyone enjoy your weekend and we'll chat soon.
Hey, good one.
All right. Bye.
Bye.